Okay, so I'll ask you to pardon the mess a little bit here. I'm in the middle of getting my Laser ZX6 ready for AstroTurf. All I'm really doing to this guy is replacing the ball diffs with gear diffs, because when you run on very high grip tracks, it tends to wear out ball diffs. But in any case, back to the main subject here. This is the Kyosho RZ6. I wanted to do a video after having installed all of the electronics, just to give you a sense of how the build went overall and how the electronics installation went. Excuse me. The build was fine. I did point out in the previous video some of the, I guess, deficiencies in the manual about how it basically assumes you have some experience building a laser and an RB6 in some parts of the instructions. But since I've built a laser, I've built an RT6. I have enough experience with Kyosho stuff, so the RZ6 conversion went pretty straightforward for me. The electronics installation was kind of interesting. I did sort of forget to point out in the last video that when you install the ZX6 drivetrain, you'll notice here that the center drivetrain, or the spur gear, the center drive shaft, everything is exactly from the ZX6, which also means this little out drive here that would normally feed a drive shaft or a dog bone that goes to the front gearbox on the laser is still there. So, this thing's going to be spinning around really fast, so you have to make sure that when you mount your electronics, you don't have any wires running close to this, because this does have, a few openings in it, and if any of these openings catch a wire, it's going to be bad news for the insulation and maybe even the actual copper strands in the wire. So, my motor wiring routes this way. This fan here has a wire that comes all the way around the side. The servo and speed control wiring that goes to the receiver, they run this way to the receiver. So, there's plenty of free space here for this thing to spin around and cause all kinds of trouble. And the actual wiring to the batteries, these wires have to be pretty long, because your shorty pack will mount on this side here. And even if the ports are in the front like this, to get to the positive port, I need enough wire to come over and also clear the spur gear, without grinding into it or anything during operation. If you want to, you could probably cut these wires a little bit shorter, okay? But if you cut it too short, then you don't get clearance over this spur gear. So I made the wires a little bit longer just to be on the safe side. Likewise for the ground cable, it would, mount on this side of the battery, and I have plenty of clearance here. One thing that stood out to me was when I mounted the motor, I initially had the motor mounted to the motor in such a way such that these three tabs here for the A, B, and C wires were kind of on top like this, so the wires ran over this way. And if I tried to mount the body, the extra height, if you will, from having those wires on top was enough to cause binding issues with the body. So I had to take the motor out and change, at what part of the motor I mounted the motor mount to move these tabs down and off to the side here, so everything runs along the side and then it kind of swoops up and then down onto the speed control. If you mount the wires, or the motor so that the wires are on this side, everything is fairly clear. The body mounts just fine. There's no binding issues or anything, so that seems to work. I did notice if you look on Petite RC for the Yatabi Arena setups for the World Championships, the kinds of stuff that Jared Tebow was running, or I think Naoto Matsukura, they were both running Kyosho stuff. Sorry, Matsukura was not. I don't remember. Anyway, Jared Tebow and some other guy, they ran a fan in the back that blew air towards the motor. And there's no actual screw hole or anything to mount fans vertically. And in most cooling fans, if you look at, the screw holes only go along the thickness of the fan. There's nothing to actually screw from the chassis up into the fan casing. There's no L bracket that comes with the kit to allow you to do that. So the really simple thing is just to use double-sided tape. And if you go to Home Depot and you look for 3M outdoor double-sided tape, it's gray with a red backing, and it's very good for RC applications. So I just used a piece of that, and it seems to mount okay. We'll see how well this holds up, if it gets jostled around, and if it actually, the tape comes undone during actual racing. Remains to be seen. If you do end up with issues with your particular double-sided tape, you can try to use the 3M tape. If you can't get any, you could try to put tape down and then just use a little bit of shoe goo around the frame of the fan, and that'll help hold it in place. And shoe goo can be, fairly easy removed if you break the fan and need to replace it. One thing that is a little weird to me is that the fan ends up blowing air this way into the motor. And if the car is moving this way, then that means air coming in from the front is going to blow this way. So the airflow, the natural airflow through the car, is going to end up competing a little bit with the airflow from the fan. You could, as a result of that, try putting the fan up here, okay, between the speed control and the motor mount, but it is a little tight. And even if you did that, the speed control itself could get into the way of providing fresh airflow into the fan, which the fan can then blow towards the motor. So it may actually be the best thing, all things considered, to put the fan here. If you want to run an additional fan, you could try doing something like mounting the fan, on one of the screws here, so that the fan kind of exists over the motor like this. It can blow some air down. I haven't tried that with this particular body, but I think there will be enough room for that, and it's just that it won't actually bind against the body. Yeah, so that's basically it, really. The electronics, installed fairly okay. I don't, I do run a somewhat chunky, old school Spectrum receiver. This is a Turnigy Trackstar 120 amp speed control. It's not an exactly small speed control, especially if you consider, the thickness of the fan on this. But everything fits okay, and I'll take this to the track this weekend and do a first track test on AstroTurf. I did do some driveway testing, if you will. I just had some spare, beater tires that I took out there just to see how the car drives initially, and it corners extremely sharply. I was very impressed with that. So I really look forward to trying this out for the first time on a proper AstroTurf track. And until then, thanks for watching.